Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting for everyone to get into the webinar, and then we'll get started in a couple of minutes. All right, let's get started here. Again, welcome to the What's New in Altium 365 webinar. My name is Christine Morris, and I'll be your presenter today. We're really excited to bring you some new features that have been brought into the platform, and we just want to make this as a little showcase of some of those features. Due to time, of course, we want to make sure we get all your questions answered. So in the event that we run out of time, we will definitely follow up and make sure that those questions are answered. Personally, we'll reach out to you. So if there is a lot of questions and it ends up being time, or you are, not able to stay till the end, please know that we will get those questions answered if they do overflow. So let's go ahead and show you some of the topics that we will talk about. We'll talk about our security improvements, new documents, views, and controls. Then we'll go ahead and show you our library management new features. Again, very excited about this, some of the resources, and again, how the market is and supply chain is really important. So managing that library data is an important aspect. With that being said, we'll also show you how to migrate to the Altium 365 from an external version control system in the event that you are coming into the Altium 365 and need to move that data across. And then we'll give some honorable mentions to a couple of other things and definitely open it up for that Q&A session. So I'll just go ahead. I want to make the PowerPoint session short here. So I'm just going to go right into the What's New document. And you'll notice one of the first things that I'm going to talk about is our certification for the SOC 2 Type 1. We received that in February of this year. Very excited about it. And for those of you that aren't familiar, it is basically an audit that is done to our platform around security measures, availability, processing integrity, and confidentiality. And what is done is that report is then issued, and it makes us certified in the certain areas that they are checking against. We are also in the process of getting our SOC 2 Type 2 certification as well. And Altium has always complied with rigorous security protocols. So this is that step in the direction of getting the certifications around it. So you'll see that, and we're really excited about it. You can look forward to, more information as it is coming through for these extra certifications that we're going for, but it is a lengthy process. So just want to share that with you today. In that same exact area, we have also come up with our new trust center. So those of you that have lots of, specific security questions around reliability, compliance, that your organization needs to actually go ahead and have answers to prior to coming into the Altium 365, we have made this a resource for you as well to get a lot of those questions answered immediately. We even have our knowledge base, which is really nice. A lot lot of specific questions that we have published to allow you to come in and get your answers there and at any point in time that you may need those. Also, if there is something specific that you have a form that needs to be filled out around security, please reach out to us. There's even a link here in our Trust Center that you can click on and submit that form. And then our security officers will then follow up and provide you with that information. So it is NDA, of course, just because of compliance issues and so forth. But if there is a need, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to go ahead and answer any questions around security that you may have. In addition to that, we also have our SSO support, which is a single sign-on support. So if you are a pro subscriber in the Altium Designer tools, then you would have access to the single sign-on capabilities. It is configured in your company dashboard. So when you log into that, you would see under the authentication area, the methods that you can go ahead and enable. We support the SAML single sign-on. So if you have identity provider and it's SAML compatible, we would support that. And some of those are, Okta, OneLogin, Microsoft Azure, Active Directory, all of those, and many more, of course, are the specific ones that you would probably enable to be able to log into that single sign-on. And once that's configured, then everyone in your team would use that moving forward. And it makes it really nice to control that sign-on capability. But you can see it's very short to get it set up. We also use provisioning, so the SCIM settings can be set up as well by your identity provider, and then that would be available for those group provisionings, and that just kind of centralizes that user management, if you will. But with that being said, all of that capability is based around the security measures that Altium is taking to ensure that your data is secure when using the Altium 365 platform. So now I'll just go ahead and I'll jump into some of the new items that are in the tools, and I'll go into my Altium Designer here. And one of those are the BOM View. So from the new document views and controls section, our BOM View is here. I have my COMI FMU project open, and one of the BOM views is driven from the active BOM. And so when you have an active BOM set up in your project, and those of you that aren't familiar with it, you would be able to go into the file new project setting or add new to project, and your active BOM would be available. And I have my BOM document already in this project, so I'll just go ahead and open that up. And this is where you're going to configure the data that BOM is going to use in the Altium 365 web browser view. So this is just going to control that supply chain data. And you can see here, you can add any solutions if you select on any of these items. A lot of those that are already set up in your BOM, if you provided those solutions already, you would see them in a full list down below. And then of course, the properties of those and how they are ranked, and if there is supply chain for each of them, would be measured here. And you can see this is just a BOM, and you can configure, any of the supplier information that is needed. Your sourcing, you might have 1, 2, 3 suppliers that you're constantly using. Also, it shows that volume production, if anything becomes obsolete. And of course, we have our properties panel that is managing and how you'll enter in that new data. So here, this is where the actual data that is viewed in the web view is sourced from. So it's basically relies on the active BOM data, and then it is brought in. And here I'll just go in and show you in the web view. I'm going to open up the COMI FMU project. And here in the BOM is where that will be detailed. So again, for those of you that may be working with counterparts within your organization, and they need to see this data, to either for procurement reasons or maybe, supply shortages, whatever it may be, they can come in, you can download this, you can share this with them by inviting them to your workspace. And you can see here, I can identify what columns I want to be actually showing, and we can show all of them. This is again based on what view or information I put into the active BOM in Altium Designer. And when I go ahead and save it to the server, all these items become available then here in the web view as well. So you can enable those specific columns. You can even click on any given item and it will give you the pane and it will isolate that into the actual design and show you exactly where that is. It will highlight that specific component. Also, if I just click on this, I have all the data about that specific component, including the part choices down below. So again, you can see this is out of date. So that status is going to be a real-time check against exactly what is on my board presently. So you want to make sure that when you're coming in here and you're going out, to fabrication with a board, you can go in here and double check that. And anyone in your team would have access to this view as well. So real nice, easy way. And again, this data, as long as you're updating that in the active BOM with your current components and supply chain, then it would be available here as well. And if they're ranked, you can see here, this is just going to give me indications of there aren't any solutions for this part, meaning that I need to put in those part choices in order to see data and have it updated in the web view. So again, if you have not seen any of that yet, I encourage you to go ahead and bring in an active BOM to your project and then save it to the server, and that will be available to anyone in your team as a BOM view. And all you need to do is select this BOM tab, and it will auto-populate with all the data and pull that in from the active BOM itself. And another thing that's really nice is now in our components panel, you can also, any data that is available about components, you would be able to copy any of that data right from the components panel. And you can add that into, any area of the tool that you needed or into documentation for that matter. So just another added bonus of that BOM view and some of the feature that came along with it. Not only that, I'm going to just switch back into my web view. We also have our layer stack view. And here I'm just going to open up my PCB view here for a moment on this same exact design. And I'm going to go into the layer stack. And here you'll see this Stackup view. Again, really excited to see this. For those of you that have been requesting this data be put into the web view, now we have it. And here you can select any one of the layers, and it's almost an interactive. And you can see here up at the top, I have the layer and the Stackup when I go ahead and want to see any of that information. Including that, if I wanted, to come in and look at this signal layer and maybe that thickness that is at the top, and maybe that thickness didn't look right to me, I could even add a comment. I could place a comment on that signal layer, and I could do an @ mention to my engineering team. And I could say, this thickness looks wrong, for example. And they could go ahead and I could post this, and I could even assign it to a task. And that's just an honorable mention. It's in beta right now, but I could post that and everyone on my team would be able to see that when they go into that PCB document. And they would be able to go in and immediately address that. What's really nice is because all these comments stay within the design itself. And if I resolve them, that just means that someone has checked into that. So our layer Stackup is now part of the commenting feature that is available, that's interactive with your engineering team. And in the event you open up your Altium Designer and you go back into that PCB document, that comment then you could reply back to, and you could double check that thickness, whatever is needed. Maybe you go into a design review and you would be able to see that then within that comment section. And if I go into my comments here, and on this, you can see that's a check view size, and it should be in my comments here as well. That's the package type, and these are just the previous ones in the PCB. But in your comments panel and tasks is where you would be able to see all of those individual ones. Not only that, only the ones that are assigned to me or are involved with, or if I know who they're from, I could also use the drop-down list and use that as a filtering system as well. But all of these are available now within that particular view of the web view as well. So just be mindful of that. In addition to that, we also have our schematic compare and Gerber compare. And what's nice about this is if you go in and you're in the project releaser, for example, if I were to go in and I'm in the PCB document and I go into the project releaser, I would be able to go ahead and set up those. Here it will run through, and this is just the releaser. If you have not seen it, it's going to pick up my out job files, and everything that is part of my out job file here, it will go ahead and run those files through the project releaser for fabrication. And so just going through that, just so you can see, I'll go in and I will prepare and release this, but we have the option here. It'll commit and save those changes, of course. Anything that has not been saved before, it'll go through, and then I'll start analyzing that data. And you can set up the actual schematic, and I'm not sure what happened there, but maybe because I was in the web view. Let me go into my license here and just do a refresh. Sometimes if you go into the web view, I notice that Altium Designer, my license server, disconnects for a moment. So let me just go in and I can cancel this. I may not be able to show, here's that prepare and release. Let me see if I can run this again. But a lot of times I need to refresh that license in order to go ahead and process the data. And it looks like it's still not wanting to do that. So let's go in. You can do it through here. And when it opens up my releaser section, I'll just close this out. I can also go in through the web view. And I hope that I don't have to close out Altium Designer, but let's go in and I'll just go in. This is another way to access the web view. And I'll go into my projects. And for those of you that haven't seen it, this is the main page. And I'll just go in and I'm going to open up this item. And this is again the same project, but I'll look at the comparison through the history. And what this does, because my project's in version control in the Altium 365, it shows me every single commit that I've done with the save to server with a date and a timestamp. And you'll notice here, any of these radial buttons, I have my comparison, and I can do it to a previous schematic version. And if there are changes on the schematic sheet, I can just go in here and choose that. And just to ensure that I do make a change, what I can do is I can go in my power supply and I will just add, say, a capacitor onto the sheet just to show a change, just so you can see how that's done. And typically I would annotate this and wire it all up. But what I'm going to do for demonstration purposes is go ahead and save this, because what it will do then, and I just say added components, just so we have our comments here. and I'll click OK. That will save it to the server. And now when I go into the web view, I will be able to go into the history and my last changes, and I can do a comparison from that previous commit. So this one was just 2 minutes ago, and I'm going to refresh my page because there is new data available, and you can see those differences are being calculated. And then I can go in and do a compare between the previous commit. And what this does is it opens up the differences dialog on the left-hand side, and I will be able to see any of those changes. And it does take a moment because it's a lot of data, and this is a pretty large design. It doesn't have a whole lot of sheets, but it has more than 1 or 2 sheets in it. And I'm using the sample data that's part of the workspace in order to show this as well. So, and it does just take a moment here, but notice on the left-hand side, I now can see where that new change came in. And not only that, it's in perspective of the whole entire design. So you can see this is the designation. I also have the ability, to filter. If I wanted, I can search on, nets or components to show that visibility, and it will highlight that. Because I only have one change, it probably isn't going to show too much. It'll only see this one difference here in the list, but you can see how valuable this would be, especially if others are making changes on the design and you're not sure what those were. Maybe there weren't comments made when they released it to the server. This would be a quick way of identifying those through the schematic comparison. Same holds true for our Gerber comparison. In the event that you made a design change here, and what I will do is I'm just going to go ahead and in my tools, I will go and shelve my polygons, and say I wanted to come in and I just briefly changed that Gerber file. And if I wanted to change that routing, I do a save to server for that. I would need to go in and save this to the server, but in order to see those changes, I would need to release this through the project releaser. And I can try it, but I just know that I just tried the releaser on this same project and it didn't appear to come through and allow me to release it. But typically I would release this as a package, and we can try it and just see if it will actually be released so I can do a comparison to another version. So I'll just go back into the project releaser, and here I will try and rerun this. Let's see if it will allow me to see those changes. And it does look like it's going to go ahead and not allow me to do that, but it's going to be the same exact way. I can go into the history and do it as well. I just really wanted to show you here. And maybe what I can do is I'll close out this PCB document and all these documents, in fact, and maybe I can go ahead and I want to make sure I go in and refresh that license. Like I said, I've noticed that if I don't refresh my license, it appears that some of my commands will not open as I expect. Here, let me just go in and I'm going to look at this project. And let's see. And if I just zoom in here and I'll just shelve my polygons for the time being. Let's see if I can just change, if I switch over to my bottom layer. See if I can just move this trace. Looks like I'm not, it may be locked. It's not allowing me to select my, Yeah, we may not. Interesting. It seems as though my my cursor isn't locked, but in any case, if I am able to produce a change in the Gerber files, when I go back in, either through the project releaser or through the actual history, I would see that as an option to go in, and I may be able to run just the releaser so I can show at least the option that I'm viewing here. Let's see if it will let me show you the releaser and where you can configure it in the project itself. And this is some new items that haven't been saved to the server, so we'll do that and it will commit as well. And we can push the changes. I really didn't make anything, so I don't want to make a comment in the design. And it's going to go ahead. It has some local modifications. And it still does not like that releaser for some reason. So what I'll do is I'll just move on to the next item. My apologies, but I won't be able to show you. Normally it's just going to be right here that populates with that data. Then I would be able to see that Gerber compare just like we did with the schematic. But it does appear like there's something else is going on, and I have a lot more information to get through. So we'll go ahead and skip that for the time being. And just go and move into the file locking if you don't mind. So for file locking, if you're not aware, you can set that up in the data management. And here under our, let's go in to our system level, and we should be able to see, oops, no, I don't, I was in the right file locking. I was in the right one at first, just wasn't seeing it clearly. Here is that file locking. When I enable file locking, what this does is it will notify someone that I have the project in use for either editing. If they decide to make a change on that project, it would open up a dialogue and let them know that someone else is in editing it. And that's only when this enable file locking option is enabled in the preferences, however. So just so you can see that, notice in the design that I was working on, this is locked currently, letting me know that I am the owner of this project. And therefore, if anyone else were to go out and start working on it, they would be notified if they tried to save to the server at the same time that there is someone else editing the design at the same time. So you want to be mindful. It is a soft lock. There isn't any real lock that ensures that someone wouldn't be able to save the changes, of course. But this kind of gives an indicator of who else has that project open. And just so you can see, there's also identifies it as locked in the web view as well. So if changes are being made, and just so you can see that, I'll go back in because I don't have a second person in the demo to kind of comply with and log in at the same time. We'll look at that file locking here and kind of show you the icons because it shows an active person. And I think it's up at the top is where our file locking is. Let me just go here. This is a soft lock and the preventions. So this is, if you can see my screen, you will notice when there's a second person that's logged in, it will show that person's name is either viewing or editing. And it shows if the document is opened as well. So these icons appear when that second person is editing as well. And if you hover over it, it allows you to see the name in the projects panel, who is logged in and either viewing or editing that same document with you. And that dialogue that's going to appear, you can see there's local changes made. You would want them to go ahead and save their changes to the server to ensure there isn't a conflict. So you will, at least it's a soft lock notifying them that the edits are being made at that time. So those local changes then need to be saved to the server after the fact. And ideally, you would want to refresh that project with the updated version after they've checked it in and save those changes back, because if not, you will be able to not go ahead and save them to the server. You would overlap what they just did. So it's always important to refresh that design, and you can do it right through the right-click menu and version control and update. Once that's updated, you pull in that latest from the server, and then you can go ahead and save your changes to it. So that just avoids this conflict of who checks it in first, and then you would have the capability of saving your changes after. And that really does limit those conflicts. And you have the option to ignore that locking as well, if you chose to, but I wouldn't recommend it, because that's ensuring later on, you're going to have to merge that data, and you're going to have to open those designs, do the comparisons, and that becomes labor intensive. So you want to be mindful if you are planning on using those file locking systems, ensure that you are, really abiding by what is being processed by the other person. That just helps mitigate any errors and eliminate those early on and preventative action. Again, just one of those soft locks. You will experiment with it a little bit, I'm sure. And in that process, you'll become very familiar. When you go ahead and disable that, the locks then in the Altium Designer will go and remove from the design. When I do the apply OK, those soft locks are no longer available. So it may not even be every design that you're using the soft locks on. It might be only a couple, but important when you're collaborating with others that you enable that option. And it's up to you and your organization whether or not you choose to do that, but it does allow and prevent others from conflicts within that design. So that's all I had along the areas of the new document views and controls for that section. The next one that I'll move on to is our library management. And I'm just going to close this out here. And what I'm going to do is I am going to go back in to my workspace view. And notice each time I open up my web view, we open up a new tab. So it's entirely up to me to, I close them out most of the time as I go. But you can see as I open up my web view again, if I go into the components, this is great because I have this component health monitor up at the top. And this just gives me a status of monitoring all my parts. And if I click on this see details, for those of you who haven't used it, it's phenomenal. It really allows me to access this, and everyone can see the status of not only my supply chain and stock issues. If I drill in here, you can see all these have issues that I want to go ahead and be able to resolve prior to going out to fabrication. In this event, I can see a live update of items, and I can even go in and through the manufacturer part search, I can select alternate parts, but you can see if I want to open up the data sheet, I can do so from here. I can show it in Octapart. I can even go in and see it in the actual design if I want it. But this is going to be, again, that data sheet. So you can select and you can show it in Octapart. You can select that supply chain. And this is just the data sheet based on that part. So a lot of information readily available to you to help you decipher, what needs to be done. And if I go back, that's just the stock issues, right? I also have duplicates. So if I have something that's a duplicate, I want to manage that. I can look at the duplicates, and this is based on, duplicates by name. And I can go in and I can look at the parameters. I can look at the references here. I can even see those part choices for each of those. So it gives me a real-time view, and even the models that are using outdated models, a very important one, especially with our supply chain issues today that are happening. This allows me the ability to come in and see which models are going to be, out of date. And at that point in time, I can go ahead and update those new references. And those would see in the design, I could go back, and if I'm in my dashboard, any one of those I would be able to cross-reference. So it's really, really great way of finding items, and making sure that those are in the right status prior to going out to fab. So ahead of time, lead time, stock issues, models that may not be up to date. And here, just so you can see as well, you're going to open it in the Altium tools. It will bring you right into the Explorer panel and to that particular component. So in the event that, I needed to edit the model, I could come in, do a right click, edit, update with what's needed. And then that new update, after I change my model, I would have that. All I need to do is save it back to the server, and it would be available and in my design with that new data. So really, really important aspect of being able to see that in the web view firsthand. And I'll just close this out, but just so you can see that and how you would edit. And it really does look like I may need to restart my Altium Designer, but we don't have that many more things to get through. So hopefully we only have a couple more items that I want to share, and then we'll open it up for questions. The next item is for those of you that are coming in and using external version control. I want to show you how you can go ahead and bring those designs in to the Altium Designer platform and the Altium 365 workspace. So this project here I have is the DVI level shifter. And just so you know, I'm going to just sign out of my workspace for a moment, and I'm going to go into my preferences and into my design repositories. This is the repository that is external that this design is currently in, this DVI level shifter project. And because it's in that external repository, I have the SVN hooks in this project. So because it has those hooks, I need to go ahead and clean those hooks and bring that data into the Git repository, which is the Altium 365 repository storage. In order to do that, we have an automated process. And I just wanted to show you that I am connected to that external repository. So any design changes that I made right now would go into my external repository, and that is through the right-click history and version control. If I wanted to commit this whole entire design, right now it would go into my version control. And at that point, I would not see anything in the Altium 365. In order to go ahead and bring it in, I need to do a right click on the actual document. And it should be in I have to connect to my workspace first of where I want to go ahead and bring this in. So otherwise, my options for the workspace aren't available. It doesn't know where I want to go ahead and load it, because before I was not connected to my workspace. Now I have a new option when I connect saying, make project available online. What this does is the dialog will open. Notice this option, migrate to Altium 365 version control storage. This allows me to go ahead and take my design from the external repository and then bring in not only the design source documents, but the history of that design as well. And when I click OK here, it's going to ask me to put it in a folder because it's new Git-based repository. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and I can create a new folder here, and I will place that new folder. I'll just say my migrated designs. And when I have that migrated designs folder set up, it will allow me to select that and it will check out that document. And that's where my new design data will be stored, because it's going to check it out from the server. It's going to place it in there. And now it's going to go ahead and move it into my Altium 365 server. And what's really nice is once it does that, then I can open it up in the web browser and I can see it available. And before I only had my other projects that were the sample data. This is going to bring in my new DVI level shifter project as well, and right through a click of a button. So I don't have to worry about, how do I remove the version control hooks from my other repository to get it inside of Altium 365. I can do it in one step. And this takes a minute to load. While this is loading, what I will do is I'm just going to go back in and I'm going to show you those project options. This now is letting me know that it is in version control and it is synchronized with my Altium 365. So now if I wanted to turn off that synchronization, this is a button because it resides in the Altium 365. I could do it from here. In the event that you needed to remove, this Altium 365 or the project from the Altium 365. But now it is securely stored in there. And I'm just going to go back into this view because I knew it took a little bit longer. And we can see that full history. And this is going to be all of those changes that were done in the VCS repository. And you can see now that full history is brought in as well. And it's in the Altium 365. So from this point forward, it is now going to be stored in my Altium 365 and a project that is readily available for anyone in my team. And you can see it here that they could open and see those contents as well. So really, really easy way of just bringing that data across from that SVN repository that would be external. So, and that was the very last thing in general that I wanted to show. I just wanted to mention a couple of things and then open it up for the rest for questions. Honorable mentions. Right now we are working on our comments and tasks, which are in a beta format. Just like when you do a comment, you can assign the task. I kind of mentioned it briefly when I was going through the layer stack information, but here it kind of gives you a list and a preview of any tasks that might be, ready to do or in progress or resolved. And this is just a high level view, maybe for project managers or someone that might be assigned a task. They could come in here and see that immediately. And we will show this in future webinars just to show you the exact data, but because it's in a beta still, we want to really make sure that that's solidified And then we'll go ahead and open that up, and that's why we're giving it an honorable mention today. You would also be able to assign those tasks to a role or a person as well, just like we do the commenting. And you can resolve them, and you would be able to see them in the list, and you can move them from one to the other very, very quickly as that progress is being made. In addition to that, the other honorable mention that I would like to make is from the Altium Designer. You would be able to go in, and from the reports menu, if you have a document that's open, you can go in, and under the project reports, you can export comments. So any of those design comments you made from the entirety of the beginning of the design to the end, you can now export those. And that might be, for auditing purposes, it goes ahead and opens it up in a PDF. You could send that off to someone. Also, those export of comments can be configured through the outjob file as well. So you can stay tuned for those. That will be coming up in another webinar. We're going to now continue to do these regularly. So any of those new items that are coming out to the Altium 365, we hope that you will attend these, see some of those, and start using those in your own design processes. So at this point, thank you for your attendance. If those of you don't want to stick around for the Q&A, we really do appreciate it. I'll open it up for questions at this point forward. And one question is, does the repository migration also work with SVN or only Git? The design that I had and my external repository that I am using is an external SVN repository. So either or, you can bring across those designs. Whichever you're using, they would be able to use that repository migration feature, and you would be able to see that full history of that design once it's brought in. And just so you can see that again in the preferences, I can sign out here. Let me just sign out first, just so you can see that that was this is an SVN type repository that I am connected to, and that's where this DVI level shifter project reside. In this repository. So that's when I did a right-click make available online. That allowed me then to bring it into my Altium 365 server here. That option will not be available if you're not connected to the Altium 365. And you may have noticed in my demo, I actually went and I did a right click and it wasn't available. And once you've made it available once, it's already in the server, so it wouldn't, if I right click on it again now, since it's already in the server, it's not available in that list. So hopefully that answers your question there. For support for flex designs, at this point, it is now being worked on as far as viewing in the web view. You definitely can push and pull design changes with the Pro subscription through the MCAD Co-Designer currently, but the viewing capabilities are being worked on, so you can see those in the Altium 365. So stay tuned for that. Great question. Another question came in. For the schematic compare, if I swap 100 nanofarad with another 100 nanofarad, would the software show a different part number that had been fitted? In the event that you're swapping out one for one, that will not show a difference per se, but you would see it in the properties in the active BOM as well. But I don't believe, because it's one for one swap, it's going to show the change if you made a specific change of, say, a component that is moved or added but I don't believe that if it's just swapped for another value, it would show that difference as in textual form. I would need to double check with you, and what I can do is I can double check on that and reply back to you in person, if you don't mind. But it definitely will show the differences for physical differences as well. Another question, where are all these schematic parts and footprints coming from? Most of the schematic parts and footprints are either from the manufacturer part search that you can search for right within Altium Designer. It is, and that is under the panels button. And let me just see, I have it here. These are all the different components. In the event that you're using your own library parts, those may be libraries that you've used for many of years and you've just brought them in to the Altium Designer, and those are the parts you're using instead of the manufacturer part search. But the manufacturer part search is powered by Octopart. And so that has hundreds of thousands of components that you can search on that are manufacturer based and have all the supply chain information added to them already. So it's kind of right out of the box that you could use those. And you would have them readily available in the designs that you're working with in the Altium Designer tool. There's also an additional question, have they been designed by Snap EDA? Most of them are either from the manufacturer or the other supply chains that have modified the parts and are part of Altium partnering. Most of them, again, are going to be from Octopart, however, and here in the manufacturer part searches, how you can search on those. And then when an alternate part is chosen, the software intelligent, is it the software intelligent enough to know of any footprint change? If you have a footprint change and you do a save to server, it will update with that latest version that you've added. So in the components, if you made, say, an edit to that change and you do a save to server, it will revision that component to the second revision. If this was the first one, it would show a second revision if I modified the footprint. So absolutely. And it will show out of date if there's a schematic document or a PCB that is open and there's an out of date footprint on it. If you go into the footprint manager, you can see what ones are out of date. You'll be able to update those in the properties panel by a click of a button. So yes, if you modify this model, it'll save it back as a second revision into the A365 server. Any design that you open that model has been placed on previously in the properties panel, you would be able to go ahead and update any information just by a click of a button, and it will update to the latest model that was in the Altium 365 server. So real easy to get those updated. And if you're not sure, you can always use the footprint manager. And again, that error came up, but hopefully that will answer that question for you as well. In addition to that, in the active BOM, choosing a different part, the footprint would be different, for example, so then it would be a reassign of the PCB. I hope I'm understanding your question. If it is a different footprint completely and say the routing change, maybe the footprint pattern isn't the same exact one that is being replaced, then yes, you would need to modify obviously then the actual connections. So you would traditionally do that at the schematic level. If you need to rewire any of the nets, if it's a different, and you need to update that through the ECO process, then here you may need to reroute, a few of the nets, provided this footprint pinout changed. Yes, you would need to do that. The tools do not reroute or reconnect any of the electrical connections, provided there is a new footprint that is of a different pinout assigned or replaced. So yeah, you would still need to do that process manually. Great question though. Another question came in, when can I see two PCBs in Altium 365? So the multi-board, being able to see that in the web view is also coming. It's in development currently. We are working on that, so stay tuned. Hopefully in one of our upcoming webinars, here in the near future, I don't know if it's planned for this fiscal year that is ending in, I don't believe it'll be that quick, but in our new one, you can most certainly stay tuned and you can look for that in the what's new. And we're doing a newsletter now, which is really nice. So if you see it appear in there, you will also probably see a webinar following that fairly quickly after. But we do have that in development currently. So hopefully we'll see that sometime in the near future. Lots of great questions today. Really appreciate your participation. And it looks like all of them have been answered. So again, check back frequently with us. That is all I had. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. We have all our support channels open to you. You can even go into a live chat and you can have a live person help you if you would like, if it needs immediate assistance. And we look forward to having you in future webinars. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.